Hi, how we doing? Just getting that right. Okay. So, hi, how we doing? Good afternoon. Happy Thursday, everyone. Before we get going, we're just going to take a few minutes just to kind of update, really. We're still in limbo. We are still waiting for Boris for Sunday, really, to announce our coming out of lockdown measures. And we don't think that actually there's going to be anything crazy happening too soon. We think that the relaxing of guidance and rules may take effect from Monday, but it's going to be very, very minor things. Maybe you might go and be able to visit a loved one, or maybe you can go slightly further from your house, or maybe even you can go out twice a day to exercise. Some crazy things like that. So I think realistically, in terms of when we are going to be opening and functioning again for both of our studios, we're probably looking at a guess. It could be the end of June. It could be the middle of June. I don't think it's going to be the beginning of June. It could even be July. But this is all speculation, and we're in touch with a lot of people who are trying to second guess when this is going to happen. But the truth is, none of us know. None of us really know. Well, I mean, the Irish government have announced their 5-stage plan of coming out of lockdown, and it seems really good, actually. Now, we may take a very similar approach, and if we do, then it could well be July before we reopen again. If we don't, who knows? So it's all speculation at this stage. The most important thing is that when we do plan to reopen and reopen both of our studios, we need to make sure that both our staff and our clients are as absolutely safe as they can be. And we need to make sure that the treatments that are being carried out carry absolutely minimal risk to both the clients and members of staff. So rest assured that when we do open, there are going to be a lot of precautions in place to limit any of that risk. So it's something that we're all going to have to get to, the new norm, or whatever it is that people keep calling it. So it's going to take some adjustment, both in terms of from us and from our clients. So on to today. So there's a couple of tattoos that we're going to start off by talking about, and then we'll just see what else happens in terms of who's watching, who comes on, who asks any questions, of course. And so the first one, I've put both of these on our Facebook feed, and so you can have a look at them on there. The one that's been on the ad that's going around, that's the one we're going to talk about. This is a client that came to see us in Bristol not long after we opened, actually. And he was looking for the PicoSure laser because he understood that was the best. He travels about 2 hours, 2.5 hours each time to come to us. This is the tattoo that we are going to be discussing. So the before and the after of just one treatment with a PicoSure, and I'll talk about that in a little while. So he has a full sleeve, and it's inner and outer full sleeve. So we have treated this now, one full treatment on every section, and we divide this type of tattoo up into 5 sections. Now, we like to try initially to treat a full sleeve every 2 to 3 weeks each section. And we do that because then it doesn't extend the time that people are coming in to see us, because we generally like to treat every 10 weeks. So if we've split an arm into 5 sections and we treat every 2 weeks, we're coming back to the same section every 10, 12 weeks. So that works. However, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes if there's an awful lot of ink that the body needs to digest and get rid of, we actually see quite slow progress. So we start off every 2 to 3 weeks for a section. If we're seeing good progress, great, we'll continue. If we can't see good progress, and actually, from our experience, we are understanding that the progress is much slower than we would normally see, then we'll stretch that out. And maybe we'll treat every section every 4 weeks or every 5 weeks. We've never really gone much more than that because the body is quite good at processing the ink. Actually, we've always seen fairly good progress. So we take every client and every tattoo individually. because every application is individual. Every person is individual. Their health, their medication, their lifestyle, their lymphatic drainage, their circulation, all those things are individual to that person. So, you know, we have a guideline that we work to, but then we adjust to suit that person, that client. And we're constantly adjusting that as we go along, because one size does not fit all. So we start off with an idea, and sometimes that changes, so we adjust. And that's, you know, that's the most important thing. It's never good to just blanket approach everything, and that's not what we do. It's all about the individual client. So this client wants this faded down. Now, for him, you know, it's a good tattoo. It's a nice tattoo. It's a good application. There's a lot of skill involved there with that application. But for this client, it was too dark. Let me just show you again. So for this client, it was just too dark. And so the idea here is that we're lighting in it to get a cover up. Now, that light ink that's been, you know, that's vanished, that's made a huge impact. And the amount of fading that we need to achieve in order to get to the right point depends on what's going over the top. So because, you know, he's gone through this once and he doesn't ever obviously want to go through this again, he wants to make sure that he's making the right decision moving forward, and he wants to get this faded down enough. So we don't have a set number of treatments that this is going to take at this stage, because at the moment, we don't know what the endpoint is, and he's not 100% sure what's going over the top. So we're taking it one step at a time, and we're taking our time. So we're treating a different section every 3 weeks. And that has actually, until, you know, up to this point, it's worked incredibly well. So that's what we'll start again when we come out of lockdown on this arm. And we'll split it into 5 sections. We may even split it into 4 sections this time, because there's less ink, less area that needs to be covered. So we may split it down into 4 sections. That depends on the pain tolerance. That depends on the amount of ink that we're treating, the location of the tattoo. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made, the after effects that might happen. And then we adjust the setting slightly to try and have a bigger impact. Now, we're not going to get as big an impact as that first treatment. The amount of fading that took place on that first treatment, that is because all that ink that's gone was very light and very superficial, a little bit grainy. So it wasn't densely packed, it wasn't really tight in, you know, in the cells. We could have a bigger impact on it. So you get this really massive wow result and wow treatment from your first laser treatment with a PicoSure, especially when it is like this. So he would have had an initial fade almost instantly once that had healed, but also you then get a later fade, and that's the same with most tattoos. First treatment, you get an initial fade, then a later fade. Now, with his second treatment, he's not going to get much of an initial fade, and that's the same for most tattoos. You will just get a later fade, and that later fade doesn't really kick in until around week 6, which is why we treat every 10 weeks. We can safely treat after 6 weeks. We choose not to, because the body hasn't even really started to process that ink. We used to treat every 8 weeks, but what we found is that actually just leaving it a little bit longer, your body processes more ink, and actually it fades better. And what we're going to find when we come out of this lockdown is that all the tattoos that we treated a while ago, and people were just about to come in before we went into lockdown, they're going to have had an extra 8, 10, 12 weeks of fading. We're going to see a good difference in their tattoo. And they may not even notice that until we look at the before images. We always take before and after images for every treatment that we do. But there is going to be a really noticeable fade, extra fade, because of this extra time in lockdown. And that is a really big factor. Time is, it has a massive impact. And so when we are struggling with a tattoo that's maybe really stubborn for whatever reason, what we tend to do now more than ever is just stretch it out. And that's really counterintuitive for a lot of people. A lot of people are kind of like, no, I want more treatments because I want better progress. So when you say to someone that's having regular treatments every 8, 10 weeks, and we're seeing relatively slow progress, because that can happen with any laser, even the PicoSure, because of the amount of variables that are involved. And then you say to them, well, actually, instead of coming in every 8 weeks, 10 weeks, I'd like you to leave it 3 months or 4 months or 6 months until your next treatment. And they have to understand that actually, or they have to try to understand, not everyone does, that actually that's a good thing, because there will be more fading. Now, if there isn't, if it doesn't work that way, which I can almost 100% guarantee that it will, then we can always go back to 8 or 10 weeks. It may just be that it's a tattoo that's going to take time. But majority, I'd say 99%, I don't actually even remember anybody that hasn't had extra fading by leaving it a little bit longer. So I have to say 100%. 100% of people that, from my experience, have left their tattoo longer in between will see a better fade. And that's why when you get a cover up, which this young man is going to be doing, you need to wait a minimum of 3 months before getting your cover up tattoo. And some tattoo artists will say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not treating it, I'm not reapplying a tattoo over the top for 6 months, because they understand that the body will continue to process that ink. So therefore, if you put new ink on top of old ink that's been treated and is fading away, there is a very small risk if you apply it too soon that actually it's going to take some of that ink away as well. So certainly minimum 3 months. Some tattoo artists would say 6 months. Take a breath. Sorry, 100 mile an hour. So we do split this into 5 sections, even 5 sections with this, because it is blocking. It's so dark, consistently all over. And I'll show you again. Some of those areas were fairly big, but each section, the longest one probably took 15 minutes. And the other part of this tattoo is the inside upper arm, which I wanted to show you as well. Very similar in its application, lots of shading. This is also on Facebook. But the difference from just one treatment is unbelievable. You don't get that with other lasers. You only get that with a PicoSure because of the fact that it's so much more powerful. It hits the ink so much harder. It breaks it into smaller pieces. Your body comes along and gobbles it up much more effectively than any other laser. And for me to say that area there took around 15 minutes to treat. If you were being treated with a slower Q-switch laser, they wouldn't treat that in one go. They'd probably split that into 4 sections, and each section would probably take them half an hour to an hour. A lot of other lasers fire at much, much slower than PicoSure. So not only is it more effective, but the actual treatments are faster and in most cases safer as well. We would, as I said, treat this we've been treating each section every 3 weeks. There are some darker areas in there. Some darker areas around kind of the elbow, the thicker black line work, the features around some of the eyes, and they're going to take longer. We will chip away at those areas over the next 2-3 treatments. It really depends, as I said before, how much we need to fade those as to what's going over the top. So we will start to form an understanding of that. This client will get in touch with an artist and they will discuss what can go over the top and roughly how much more fading we need to achieve that. And then it's down to compromise and time and cost. And most of this is down to time, cost, and money. So, how patient are you? How long you want this to take? How long before you want to get the cover up? How much you're willing to spend and the pain, of course. How much, how many times you want to come in and go through that experience. So to treat the inner outer arm of a full sleeve of this kind of size, you'd normally be looking at around £800 to £900 per treatment, full treatment. That doesn't matter how many sections we'll split that into. And then what we'll do is we'll have to actually reevaluate this to an extent, because it may be that we ignore any of the really light ink for that second treatment through discussion with the client, and then just focus on the really dark ink. Now, if that's the case, we can obviously get that cost down for his second treatment, your second treatment significantly, because we price on the amount of ink that we're treating. So therefore, it's not fair to say, well, actually, yes, another £900, please, and we're going to just treat a bit of your arm. It doesn't work like that. Not with us. It may do with some other clinics, some other studios, but not with us. We try to be as fair as possible. So we'll see once we get through this, and we'll speak to the client and see exactly what they want to achieve. Start to get an understanding from a tattoo artist, and then they can advise us as to what we need to achieve to enable that cover up to take place. Also, for this client, what we did was we did actually get the cost down a little bit more for this client, because on his other arm, he's got a full lower sleeve that he also wants fading to cover. Now, because of that, we kind of combined all the ink, and then we gave a slightly better price. So actually, for one treatment, full treatment on a full sleeve, for this client, it ended up being $750, because we took into account the other full lower sleeve that we were going to treat as well. If he's a loyal customer to us and a loyal client to us, then obviously we're going to look after him. That's the way it works. And when you group the ink together, it becomes more cost effective, rather than sort of going through this arm, finishing it. Wants to you now do the other arm and then come back to this arm and chop and change. So we try and work with our clients as much as possible. I think that's probably it for this one. I'm just going to show that one more time, just in case people would like to kind of see it. It is on our Facebook. several times, so you can have a look at those. I've had a question coming from somebody, Dan. What is the body actually doing to process the ink? So we hit the ink. The laser pushes pressure waves through the skin, and those pressure waves create friction, which is why it feels hot during the treatment. They hit the ink and they heat it up a little bit. The ink releases gases and moisture that basically turns the ink white, and so that you get something called frosting. And that frosting sits on the top of the ink and underneath the skin. And it dies down after about 5 or 10 minutes. The ink is then hit and it breaks into smaller pieces, and then your body basically comes along and gobbles that ink up. And then it takes it through your system, through your lymphatic system, and through, it basically filters it out. And then you essentially wear out. Not that you'll ever see that, unfortunately, because I think that'd be really satisfying if you could see that, you got treated, you saw the ink disappearing, and then you saw it actually removed from your body. That would be quite cool, but unfortunately you don't see that. So that's the kind of the rough understanding. So, there are things that can help with tattoo removal. It's all relative. So if you generally lead a pretty healthy lifestyle, you don't have any medication or illnesses, you exercise fairly regularly, you drink a lot of water, maybe you take some vitamin supplements, you work out, you're always going to get slightly better results than somebody that smokes 40 fags a day, drinks like a fish, terrible diet, doesn't exercise, etc., etc. There's always going to be that. Location is also a thing that can play a big part. I've got a client who is a lovely young lady. She's very tall, and she's very fit, very healthy, no problem with that. But her circulation is really bad, and her tattoo is on her foot. And actually, that bad circulation is having quite a big impact on the slow removal of her tattoo. So location can also play a part in that. I hope that kind of answers your question, Dan. So please get back to me with any questions that you've got around that. I've got another question that's coming from Mitch. Mitch is our #1 fan. Mitch is on most of our calls. So do you normally notice the most visible difference after the first treatment, or is it roughly the same every treatment? Great question. So it depends on the type of tattoo. So a tattoo like this that we've been speaking about, first treatment, you're going to see a significant fade, because there's a lot of that kind of medium to light ink in the skin, the more superficial shading. So you get a big impact on your first treatment. After that, it's going to be less each time. But when I say less each time, we're going to be chipping away. For a normal standard tattoo, we normally say we get around 30%, 20 to 30% reduction on your first treatment, and then around a 10 to 15% reduction every treatment after that. So it does depend very much on the tattoo, the application of the tattoo, and all the other variables that I've spoken about as well. But generally, slightly bigger on your first treatment, and then second, third, fourth, and so on. It plateaus, and then we just chip away at it. Some get chipped away at quicker, some take longer, and it is different for every tattoo, mainly around the application and different for every person. So yeah, very good question. Thank you. So the other tattoo that I wanted to speak briefly about is one that's quite different. It was from a potential client that got in touch this week, and she's got a tattoo on her back. It is on our Facebook, but actually she is very, very kindly just sent me an updated photo of it, and it is clearer, gives me a lot more information and understanding to be able to then talk about and obviously go back to her. So just so you know, this is it. I hope you can see that. I can see that there's quite a lot of glare coming off of the window, but basically it's two halves. There's the top half, which is lighter and more superficial, and then there's the bottom half, which is actually a cover-up. So we've got the top half, which will treat quicker, and the bottom half, which will take longer, because there's ink on top of ink. And that's always the way with cover-up tattoos. Now, sometimes that ink underneath, if it's lighter or more superficial, will disappear at the same rate or even quicker sometimes than the ink that's on top. Sometimes, and more often I would say, the ink underneath or the ink on top goes quicker, and the ink underneath becomes more visible. But it depends on how the two have been applied. So very much as if you were like treating a single tattoo. Lighter, more superficial ones go quicker, darker, deeper, denser. Line work, for example, always takes a bit longer. Writing takes a bit longer. It's always, a shame when you're treating a cover-up. You are obviously, the cover-up has been done for a reason. It could be an ex's name under there. It could be just a tattoo that they didn't like. It could be a symbol. It could be a date. It could be many reasons. But their tattoo on top is a bit lighter. So you're starting the removal process. And then unfortunately, the one that's underneath that wanted the cover up is there and actually becomes more prominent and you can see it. And that's a real shame. But unfortunately, that is a real risk. Now, you're not going to have to live with that forever, but it will be there in plain sight for some time, unfortunately, until we continue that removal process. So I've thought of another thing to speak about actually for the first tattoo, but just going back onto this one briefly. I will put this on our Facebook as well. It is a better photo, but you can see it on our Facebook page as well at the moment. So there's a whole range of colors with this. We've got pinks, greens, blacks, kind of like a pinky purple color. Yeah, there's a yellow in there as well. We can treat all colors. That's not a concern for us. And this client actually, again, wants to cover this up. Now, they were a referral from a tattoo artist that we treat and who is an excellent artist. And this client is already having some of her work done on the rest of her body. So she wants to continue that style. And that style is very much kind of black and gray style. So in order to get the cover up that she wants with this type of tattoo, we are going to have to really take it back, probably to virtually nothing. Now, the top part of the tattoo is a single tattoo, and I think it's going to treat very, very quickly. Our laser loves blues, greens especially, so we're going to see a big difference. But even the rest of those colors are not dark and superficial. They're dark and dense. They are light and superficial. So they're going to treat differently. So it may be where we would normally say 2 to 4 treatments to fade for a cover up, 4 to 8 for full removal. We do need to get this down to nearly full removal. But the top bit, within 2, 3 treatments, we should see a huge impact on that. It may be then that we're only then focusing on the bottom bit, because that bottom bit, the cover up, it's that line work, that thicker line work that's going to take the time to remove. So let me see if I can just show you the bit at the bottom just to see. It's that thicker line work there that's going to take the time to remove. So we may say, 2 to 3, maybe 4 treatments. Don't know at this stage on the top bit to get it back to nearly nothing. And then that bottom bit, we may just then be concentrating on the line work. But because it's black and grey and going over the top, and because the artist I know is excellent, she may be able to work with that and work around that. So again, it's going to be a case of probably getting maybe 2 to 3 treatments done on carried out on the whole tattoo, and then liaising with the artist and saying, yeah, this is where we're at. What can you do? How much do I need to compromise to get what I want? I don't want to be going through this again. I want to get it right this time. So if it means an extra treatment or 2 just on that lower bit, just to get to the point that it can be covered nicely with something that can't be seen underneath, then, so be it. An extra treatment or 2 in the grand scheme of things, an extra couple of months, 3 months, 4 months in the grand scheme of things is not a lot when it's something that hopefully is this time going to be on your body forever. So be careful with compromise. It can come back to bite you if you compromise too much and too soon. So think about that. We would start by treating just with the one wavelength, which is the 755, which is attracted to those colder colors in the spectrum of light. First treatment across the whole thing, because there are some darker tones in some of those warmer colors. Second treatment, we'd then use the 2 wavelengths. So 755 for the cold colors, 532 for those warmer colors. And then we'd really start to see a big impact on all of that tattoo. And then each time we then treat, we would alternate. So first treatment, 1 wavelength, second treatment, 2 wavelengths, third treatment, 3, fourth treatment, 2. Because the 532 is more aggressive on pigment, we want to minimize that risk of removing pigment from the skin. It's a low risk, but it's a higher risk with a 532, which is attracted to those warmer colors. So it's a bit more aggressive. So we actually only use that every other treatment. But again, that ink there is light and superficial. It should go very, very quickly. So we'll see a really big impact with that. We can treat all of that in one go. It depends. I mean, it's not too much ink, but it is in quite a sensitive area. So my advice, my guidance with this one would probably be treat half, 4, 5, 6 weeks later, come back, let's treat the other half. And then let's see where we're at. If we've removed a substantial amount of ink or it's faded down quite nicely, maybe that next treatment we can go at the whole thing. But we will know then how the client handles the sensation and the pain of this, because it's different for everybody, but that is quite a sensitive area. Spine and lower back, definitely more sensitive than that upper back. But to treat the whole tattoo in one go with one wavelength, first treatment, we're probably talking about 10, 12 minutes maybe. The 532 has a much smaller spot size. So if you use that, it takes longer, but it doesn't hurt as much. So it's kind of a nice trade-off, if you like. So when we use the two wavelengths together, if we treated the whole thing, we'd probably be looking more like sort of 20 minutes. But there would be some stoppages in there, and half of that, at least over half of that, would be with the 532, which doesn't hurt as much anyway. Obviously, this is all information that we would share with our clients before we go, ahead. And it could be that we started and the client is happy to just go through the whole thing, or they might get a third of the way through and just say, do you know what? Stop. I'm coming back in 3, 4, 5 weeks' time. I'm going to do a bit more, and I'm going to take it very slowly, because that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And some people will ask if they can use numbing cream. We don't have like a no, you can't use numbing cream policy, but we do try to discourage it if possible, mainly because it changes the texture of the skin, can act as a barrier, and therefore treatment can be slower, progress can be slower. However, if it's the only way you can have treatment, then absolutely. We do see slightly slower progress in some clients, not every client. So if you do find it painful, don't let it be a barrier to you. Come in, have a test patch, see how you feel. If that's okay, let's do a bit more. Let's do 24 hours, whatever it may be, get you back in and carry out half a treatment, a full treatment. We work with our clients. So, there's no problem with stopping and starting. There's no problem with doing it in smaller chunks or just going through it in one go. We understand that it can hurt for some people. In terms of cost, it's quite a big piece. It's hard to see from here, but it goes from the lower back up onto that kind of bra strap area, maybe slightly higher. So this would be but it does spread out. It's about the amount of ink we're treating, not the overall shape and size of the tattoo. So if we squish this down, it would work out around 240, 260 for the first treatment, and then probably similar for the second treatment. But then after that, we may just decide to treat that bottom bit. So then we'd be looking to bring it down to about 180 per treatment. And we treat every 10 weeks for the full tattoo, or we can break it down into whatever we need to. In terms of cost, for that, it's quite hard in terms of trying to say how much would it be for a course of treatments, because we are taking it one step at a time, one treatment at a time, and trying to figure out how much ink we're treating, etc. But we'll always work with our client and be honest and fair and transparent and price it on the amount of ink that we are treating for that treatment, if that makes sense. I think that is probably about it for that one, unless anybody has any questions around that. I hope that helps. I'm trying to do a different type take a different case study, a different type of tattoo every week that we do this. And this is probably going to keep going for the next 3 or 4 weeks. And then once we start to plan to reopen, I may do this every fortnightly. But if anybody has ever got a tattoo that they would like to be discussed in this way, please send it in. If you've got a tattoo that you would like but not on here, then obviously email me, message me on Facebook or Instagram, and include a photo and include your email address, because that means I can then get back to you with a video message, a bit like this, telling you all the information you need to know around the potential treatment of your tattoo. Absolutely no strings. If you just take that information and go away and just decide it's not for you, or you take that information and go away and do some more research elsewhere, it's not a problem. It's a lot of bad information, a lot of false information, a lot of biased information online. It's very hard to sift through what's right and wrong, and actually what's relevant to you. Without having to go to a consultation, etc. We can do that. We can do that later. Even when we are open, we're happy to do this until you're ready to come in for a consultation. It's really important for us that you're ready. I've got a question that's come through. Thank you, Owen. Is there any type of tattoo that can't be fully removed? There's always a risk that a tattoo can't be fully removed, but we normally say that we can fully remove around 90%, 90 to 95% of all tattoos. Tattoos that are more difficult are double, triple tattoos, tattoos that have been covered over 2 or 3 times. Even a double tattoo can be really tricky sometimes. But some tribals you get, they've been colored in 3 times, and you hit them a couple of times with a laser, and it almost looks like nothing's happened. It just, the amount of ink in there. And we can break that down, but most tattoos, it's about how many treatments rather than can or can't. But again, that comes down to pain, time, cost. So, it depends really. If it is a tattoo like that, most people understand, and we would tell them from the beginning, absolutely. We are 100% honest and transparent. And, if I thought a tattoo was not going to be possible to be removed, or it was going to take 12, 14 treatments, I will tell clients. At least then they've got the relevant and honest information to make a decision. Actually, it's not for me. I'm going to not worry about it. I'm just going to live with it. Or maybe I'm going to fade it down and cover it because that's going to be a quicker process. Or actually, yeah, I'm in for this for the long haul. I'm start to finish. I hate it. Whatever it takes, I need this off my arm, leg, wherever. So it is. Other reasons why a tattoo might not be able to be removed: location. So if it's on the extremities, that can make things more difficult, but it depends if it's a cover up and on the extremities. So once you start to get 2 or 3 variables that kind of work together or go against each other, then it can become really difficult. So for example, if someone's got a tattoo on their foot, they have a few health implications and it's a cover up tattoo, then you're looking at some big question marks on actually, can we fully remove this tattoo? Is there scarring in the tattoo? We see a lot of scarring from the application of tattoos, especially on slightly older clients, because their skin doesn't have as much collagen and elastin, and therefore it is easier to scar. But also where there's a lot of line work involved, or just actually where an artist isn't very good or very skilled or not, very good at what they do. They drag the needle and it can scar. So we do see a lot of scarring, mainly in the line work, and that can make it quite tricky. It depends. Sometimes the ink pulls around the edge of the scar. Sometimes it goes very quickly. It just depends how much of that ink is caught up in the actual scarring itself. Health, any autoimmune deficiency disorders, that can have a massive impact. And there would even be a question mark as to whether we would even treat them. Colors, ink colors. Most colors we can treat with no problem. White is a problem because it's not a color, therefore, and it contains a lot of metal, so it oxidizes and it mostly turns like a dirty gray kind of color. That can be then very difficult to remove. Neon colors, they're very unusual. They're not, again, the lasers aren't really attracted to neon, so that's weird. And then you have acrylic colors. So there are sometimes inks that contain acrylic. You do tend to get them more kind of Thailand, China, but I have experienced one of those in our studio, and it was weird. It didn't react very well to laser. It didn't treat very well. It was a big reaction. It just wasn't. It was never going to go, unfortunately. And that was a conversation we had to have, but that was what we narrowed it down to. So there's always a reason. There is always a reason. You just got to find that reason. And so we do an incredibly thorough consultation, etc. And we try and figure out all of these things before we start. Some things you just don't know. Some things you can't see until you're a treatment or 2 in. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately, with tattoo removal. There are no 100% guarantees, which is why we can never say, oh, yeah, that's going to take 3 treatments to remove. That would take 6. That would be gone in 1. Because it just doesn't work that way. Every person is different. Every tattoo is different. And there are so many variables involved. But we do have the best, most advanced, safest laser in the world. So with us, we've got a much better chance than anywhere else. I hope that answers some of your question, Owen. So yes, there are some tattoos that won't be able to be removed, but most can in time. There's another one. I'm afraid I don't really understand. If you've had a lot of injections over the last few days or weeks, is it possible to have your treatment that week? Okay, so from injections, let's assume it's medication. Let's assume it's, I don't know why you'd have to have injections. Let's just say you're unwell. And please just clarify that if this isn't what you're talking about. If you're unwell, should you have treatment? No. It's your immune system that deals with the ink. So if you're unwell and we treat you, you're going to be feeling even rougher because we're overloading your immune system, and it's not going to recover in time. It's not going to get rid of the ink very effectively. If sometimes you can feel a little bit under the weather even just after a treatment, and you don't think you're unwell, but you could have something lurking in the background. If you're taking antibiotics, etc., why would you compromise what good effect they're having to overrun your immune system? So no, basically, if you're unwell, you shouldn't be coming in. And obviously, with current situation, if you're unwell, if you know others around you are unwell, then you certainly shouldn't be coming in. But we'll come on to all of that. That's not something to be considering right now until we open. But no, don't come in if you're unwell. Okay, so I think that's it from me. I am going to try and look at some different tattoos next week. We do this every week. So if you have benefited from this, brilliant, let me know. If there's anything else that we can do to improve this, let me know. If there's anyone else you think would benefit from this, please pass it on, let them know as well. Please subscribe if you can. It helps us, obviously, as much as you can, as much as, sorry, I got distracted by another question there. No, so this Mitchell was asking again, sorry, about injections if you have to enter a country. First of all, I won't worry about that. No one's going to be entering any countries for some time. But no, I would certainly wait for an agreed period of time before coming in, depending on what that injection is. It could be for many, many different things, but there would be a protocol to follow for that injection from the person that's administered that injection. But I would say at least 2 weeks after an injection, because it's got some work to do in your antibodies and your immune system, but it depends what it is, and you'd have to take that on a case-by-case situation. So stay well, stay safe. Thank you very much for tuning in today. If you've got any queries, any questions around this or anything else, please get in touch. Facebook message, Instagram message, email, include photos, include your email address so I can get back to you. And we will be in touch to everybody once we know what's happening after Sunday. We'll formulate a plan early next week, and we should start to be able to understand when we're going to be opening again. So until then, thank you very much and stay safe.